And we're live. What's up, everybody? Thank you for your patience. We are few minutes behind. You might notice a slightly different backdrop today. I'm in a new apartment. Kind of has like a grandparent aesthetic. It's beautiful, but a little elderly. I'm cool with it. I'm here for the next 2 months. Uh, Unfortunately, I don't have my mic set up today, so I hope the audio is good. Chat, let me know how you think the audio is. Those who listen just to the audio version of this, I apologize because you rely on that crisp audio, which we may not have today. Maybe a good opportunity to mention that this does go on Spotify, iTunes, and all the audio podcast sites. Shout out to the audio listeners. We're going to have a relatively lighthearted one. I feel weird saying lighthearted when it comes to the conflict just because of how much bloodshed we've seen. Um, But if we can't still find things to smile about, what's the point of living? And I know I say this from a place of extreme privilege because I'm here safe. But those who can should always remain smiling. So we're gonna review some cringe Israel-Palestine takes. If anybody has a take they want reviewed, please send it to me. You could send a link in chat, or better yet, here I'm gonna post my Twitter and Instagram handles. Message me there. Message me there, whatever you want reviewed. I think we should start on Twitter, right? That's like cringe land. And then we could just flow from there. I want to review some cringe accounts. There's unfortunately the biggest voices when it comes to Israel and Palestine, they all suck, you know? It's almost like a presidency also. You look at like the available candidates or like who's likely to be the next president, Joe Biden or Donald Trump, right? Out of a country of 350 million people, this is the best we can produce? Not really. So there seems to be a consistent theme of how popular people, those who are most popular, are very rarely the best people we should be listening to or the best people for a certain job. So this is true when it comes to presidential candidates. It seems true when it comes to Twitter influencers as well. Um, I think if anything, it just shows one of the fundamental flaws in democracy and how the masses make decisions. As Winston Churchill said, democracy is the worst form of governance, except for all the others. Um, at least all the others that we've thought of yet. I'm sure perhaps in some decades or centuries we'll look back at democracy and laugh at how primitive and simple it was. Let those easily manipulated common folks make such complicated decisions. That's probably what they'll say. And interestingly, that's what they used to say. Um, Anyways, let me know, chat. Let me know where you're tuning in from. Feel free to ask questions. We'll do some Q&A. I'm gonna share some Twitter. Either we just scroll Twitter and see what pops up, or we go to some specific accounts that I've just been cringing at since the start of the conflict, or since the start of this wave of violence. Let's share screen. Oh, and hold on. You got to always thank the patrons. Thank you to our patrons, those supporting the show. We have our Patreon visionary members. We have Renee Gordon, Adam Boz Becker, Neva Goldstein, and David Edwards, and all our patrons. If you want to support the show, you could find a link to do so in the description. You could be a member here on YouTube, or you could become a member on Patreon. The membership doesn't really come with benefits, except a shout out if you're a visionary member, and just knowing that you're supporting this important project. And the idea is to really eventually hire a full-time member so we could do more of this content, be more involved in the reconciliation process. If I had a preference, I'd say I'd rather you be a member on Patreon than on YouTube. YouTube actually takes a third of whatever you donate, 1/3. So those thieves. Patreon takes like a 5%, so money is better spent there. Super chats are also always appreciated. And yeah, um, let's get the show on the road. Yeah, or saying, "Be careful, I sound aristocratic while not being part of the aristocracy." Yeah, that's certainly a challenge in getting rid of democracy, right? Who is the one who makes the decisions? But if we move away from democracy, I don't think it's going to be going back to the aristocracy making decisions. I think it'll be more of a form of like an AI benevolent dictatorship style, which again it could end up disastrous, but it'll definitely be better at processing data and making decisions than a very limited human being. Uh, as long as we have like a fail-safe button that we can decide to shut down the system, I think we might be okay giving that one a shot. Share screen. Who here still calls it Twitter and who here calls it X? Oh, first on my feed, Lucas Gage. Should we start with Lucas's account? Oh, I realized I didn't bring it up. Lucas is, I would say, Lucas is like the biggest anti-Semitic account on Twitter, and many of you who've been watching this know don't just like to throw out anti-Semitic at anything that I disagree with. Disagree with, like many like to do. Lucas is a real anti-Semite. No, not just an anti-Zionist. Like he hates the Jews. 99% of us, he says, are problematic, right? So if this is an anti-Semitic, then what is? And interestingly, if you were to ask him if he's anti-Semitic, I think he would deny it. He'd say, "No, I'm not." He'd say, and the way he kind of hops around the issue is like, "I have no problem with Jews, just Jewish supremacy." But then he also believes that 99% of Jews are somehow supremacists. Um, it seems like you guys want to talk more about this whole AI thing, or is asking who decides which AI platform we go with. Well, we could vote on it. Our politicians could decide. There's different ways to make decisions. It could be passed into law. It could start on a small local level, like have a town be managed by AI, see how that works, have it prove itself, right? It might not even be all too complicated. It might start on a very small local level, see the efficiency in the decision making of something far more superior cognitively than a human. The small town increases in efficiency and productivity. They're like, okay, cool. Let's try this on a county level. Boom, and it starts out competing all other counties. Okay, let's do this on a state level, and then it becomes a no-brainer to do it on a national level. The people are requesting it because they want that unlocked efficiency and productivity, right? It could happen very organically like that. It almost seems like those who would be most resistant to some form of AI governance would be politicians themselves because they'd be out of the job, right? And we know AI is coming for a lot of the jobs, primarily jobs that are about processing data, like being a doctor, politician, similar concept. It seems like the jobs that will remain longest are ones that require some kind of a human element, or not even a human element, but like a movement element, right? So like plumbers, contractors, like this will take a long time before this is replaced by artificial intelligence because it's not just having a a mind, it's about having the hardware to match that can do these complex tasks. Or things like a nurse is going to be will last longer than doctors, right? It'll be harder to replace nurses than doctors, psychologists as well. But we could already start to see a world where psychology can also be done through AI. You could already ask ChatGPT questions about your life, and it'll give you some very solid advice. Um, and a lot of people can't afford a psychologist, so if you have this little AI buddy that can really get to know you, understand your needs, um, learn about your history, your traumas, and help you, like, that's just a much lower cost way for people to seek help. And it very well might just be a matter of years before this technology can do it better than a psychologist that has limited capacity to remember everybody's story and their history and what they're going through. um, Understanding the full depth of, like, of of psychology and what we know about it. So AI can do this quite relatively easily, or in theory at least. Cool. We're gonna go to the stream. We can talk about AI another time. So Lucas, hold on. Lucas Gage, number one anti-Semite on Twitter. Um, the challenge with a lot of anti-Semites is that a lot of their hate is rooted in conspiracy. So it's not always easy to debate, because they believe something that it's almost impossible to prove if happened or not. And a lot of their hate is really dependent on these beliefs. Um, but so we'll see some of that. He also has he served in Iraq as a U.S. Marine, and I think he has some trauma. I think we see his trauma coming out on some posts. Uh, you'll see there's a lot of anger in his posts, and I'm not going to say he's not a smart guy. He seems intelligent, but a lot of the arguments he make, if you actually think about them, they have gaping holes in them, and I don't know if he realizes them. He's just so fueled by his disdain for the Jews, or if he just doesn't realize that these aren't sound arguments. So, anyways, let's review Lucas Gage's account. And again, you could send me takes you want me to review. For now, we'll just be doing Lucas, and then maybe we'll move to a nice pro-Israel account. Yeah, we'll have fun with it. Like, this is his pin tweet. This is a long one. Do we want to? Maybe we'll skip over this long one. So I don't know. There's some drama with Dan Cohen. He goes, "No, Dan Cohen went on a show calling me an anti-Semite and a deep state agent. Jews like Dan are there to control the narrative and keep it within kosher boundaries. The last thing Jews want are Gentiles actively solving the problems they created. He makes a living reporting on his fellow Jews' crimes." So right, I mean, this clearly, right. These are the words of an anti-Semite. There's really no question about it. Um, he really struggles with the Jews. I don't really know the drama here, but he's almost hinting here that, like, Dan Cohen went on a show calling me an anti-Semite, as if he takes issue with this, which means he very well might not feel like he's an anti-Semite. I'd actually, be down to have Lucas on the show for a conversation, for him to make the case that he's not anti-Semitic. And I honestly think we could maybe have a nice, productive conversation. It's funny, here we see a little bit of a split, like, how you have many on left-wing Zionists like to say, look, the real Jews are anti-Zionist as well. And now Lucas is having a little battle with them. The real Jews are Zionists. So I think this is a difference between right-wing anti-Zionism and left-wing anti-Zionism, perhaps. Um, so Lucas goes, real Jews are Zionists. Judaism's entire end game is Zionism. I mean, he does have a point here, right? So, like, the religious Jews that are anti-Zionist, they're anti the state of Israel in its current form. It's not like they don't believe that Jews should one day return to the land and create a Jewish kingdom there. They just believe it should only happen when the Messiah comes. So there is an argument to be made that the anti-Zionist Neturei Karta, they just support a different form of Zionism, but they don't support the state of Israel as it is. So Israeli citizens spoke against the crimes of
Jewish.
Israel.
I'm Israeli. My parents were the only survivors of their families from the Holocaust. They both survived Auschwitz. I'm not going to support genocide, am I? I'm here with the
This is pretty amazing. So you literally have a Jew protesting Israel, saying that he's protesting Israel because his family are Holocaust survivors, right? And this Norman Finkelstein takes a very similar approach. Lucas takes issue with this because he says, how dare him mention him being a Jew or the Holocaust? Do I run around saying, well, as a white man, I think it's wrong to bomb children? In a way, he implies most of his tribe are genocidal maniacs, and he's not one of them. No, that's not what he's implying. It's very common, and you can make the argument that you shouldn't do this, but it's very common to people to mention the identity they come from as a form to give them legitimacy on an issue. Um, and Lucas would likely do this too if it was something relevant to his identity. If it was something, for example, if there was like a movement on the left saying, uh, real white men are feminine, he would say, as a white man, I disagree, right? Because in that instance, it's his identity is relevant. This isn't something connected to Jewish supremacy. This is something that people do across the board. That you could say your identity doesn't give you more legitimacy. You can make that argument, but it has nothing to do with Jewish supremacy in action. So, and you'll know this in forms of group hate. They often, it's like when you look at the world through Jew-tinted glasses, you see the Jew everywhere. And this is true about any tint you have on your glasses. But often, the group you hate, you see them doing these horrible things, and you think it's unique or exclusive to that group. If Lucas were to see somebody else, say, as a woman or as a black person, he might notice it, but it wouldn't trigger him nearly as bad because he's not as sensitive to women or to black people than he is to Jews. So every time he sees a Jew do it, it kind of triggers something in him. It takes up a lot more space in his mind. And that's like a lot of how like biases against people work. So this is funny. He's calling out an anti-Zionist Jew, or at least a Jew that's protesting the Israeli government because he mentioned that his family was in the Holocaust. Okay, let's see. Here's the trick. He's going to teach us a trick. Let's see what trick he knows. Zionist Jews. Hey, Judeo-Christian white men, we need to go to war with those brown Muslim jihadis. Anti-Zionist Jews. Hey, people of all color, we need to go to war with those white supremacist Christians. See who's always protected in both cases. Okay, so let's start with Zionist Jews. So what he's actually referring to, because he says Judeo-Christian white men, he's not saying Zionist Jews. He's referring to right-wing Jews. And he's saying some right-wing Jews want us to go to war with Muslim jihadists. That's true. That is true about right-wing people in general. He's just attributing it to the Jew. But if you look at like American conservatism, a lot of them feel like our biggest threat is Muslim jihadists. The Republican Party would not be empowered by Jewish votes alone. I mean, that's very clear. It requires white Christian men, men who are actually more similar to Lucas than to Jews for U.S. foreign policy support that involves fighting Muslim jihadists. But here he really attributes something that is very obviously attributed to conservatism, or at least American conservatism, and he makes it about Jews. And then he goes, let's go to anti-Zionist Jews. Hey, all people of color, we need to go to war with those white supremacist Christians. That is true of Jews who are on the left, and a very special part of the left, what has been known as wokeness, right? If you're a woke Jew, you're going to feel like we need to go to war with white supremacists. If you're a woke atheist or Christian or Muslim, you're going to feel the same exact way. So what he does is he's doing is pointing out that Jews on different sides of the political spectrum have have different beliefs. And then he goes, see who's always protected in both cases. So now he thinks he's making an interesting point of the fact that he's not going to see Jews who are blatantly anti-Semitic. But that's okay. That's not really a point, my guy. It's going to be hard to find a Jew that their entire narrative is to be anti-Semitic. And again, here all we're seeing is you're matching. You're attributing political ideology to Jewish ideology, which is, again, it's a common theme that we see in anti-Semites or people who in general don't like certain groups. So again, this argument, right? You could like what he's saying here. You could almost question his intelligence, because it's quite obvious that he's doing something that doesn't seem so intellectually sophisticated. So the question is, does he realize that this is a bad argument and he doesn't care, or if he's really just hasn't thought through this stuff and really understood that all he's doing is saying, oh, look, a conservative Jew believes that, a liberal Jew believes that. Look at them playing both sides of politics and leaving the Jew out. It's just it's not thought through, my guy. Let's see this one. Why I push free speech the way I do is to purposely trigger those against it. They get mad, then they demand my censorship, which shows everyone who they are. They cannot stop my strategy, even when I tell them. They're predictable because I've read their playbook. And then their playbook is here. I don't know what this is going to lead to. Maybe I'll look it over later. I also don't buy that this is why he does it, that he does it to purposely trigger those against it. I think he very much believes in this truth and feels like he's doing something good talking about it. And the natural response to some of his truth is people calling for him to be censored. Now he's saying Nazi, Jew hater, anti-Semite, white supremacist, fascist, Holocaust denier, or labels Jews throw out people who refuse to submit to Jewish supremacy. If you're not being called at least one of these things, you're not actually fighting the system. Right? Here's just also another post that just, lacks a certain awareness of how things actually work. We'll start where what's true about this. It's that a lot of these terms are way too commonly used. And, in politics today, also, this is something that the woke has very much popularized. It is to use pejoratives to describe those who you disagree with politically, and nasty pejoratives. So it's not uncommon for, we saw this during the 2020 elections, was it? No, sorry, the 2016 elections. Anybody voting for Trump was called a Nazi, right? This was very common for people to do on the left. Now we're seeing a lot of people opposing Israel. Even if it's legitimate opposition, they could be called an anti-Semite or a Nazi. So there's there's an overusage of these terms. Where he's wrong is they're not labels Jews throw out people who refuse to submit to Jewish supremacy. This is just not connected to reality. Jewish supremacy is not the problem here. The problem is calling somebody a pejorative if you disagree with their politics, which is something we are seeing on both sides of the political spectrum. It is something Jews certainly engage in, but they do so not for any reasons connected to. Actually, let me be more charitable here. If he means if what he's saying submit to Jewish supremacy, he means Zionism, then I think it's actually a more accurate statement. I think that opposition to Zionism is often met with certain pejoratives, like, anti-Semitic. Some would even go on to say Nazi. But based on knowing his stuff, when he says Jewish supremacy, he doesn't only mean Zionism. He's saying in general, Jews have this this mission to control the Gentiles, right? This is one of the conspiracies that many anti-Semites believe, because they read the Talmud, which certainly has certain supremacist texts in that, and they attribute those beliefs to every Jew, including atheist Jews in Hollywood and in Wall Street. And so any action they see a Jew taking, they attribute to this idea of trying to control the Gentiles. So this is really what he's referring to. And most Jews are not on a life mission to control the Gentiles. I would say a fraction of the Jews maybe even think about that as even some kind of Jewish mission. And I'm not no theologian, but I do come from a very large family, most of them being religious, and I can tell you with confidence that this idea of having control over the rest of the world is not something that is discussed or spoken of. Yeah, there's certainly beliefs of we are the chosen ones. Some view chosen as, say, chosen in the sense of special. Others say chosen as chosen with a certain duty or responsibility. But it's not like any of these actually act in a way that they feel like global control is what their life mission or what's important in Judaism. And in fact, the Jews, and here's one of the largest holes in a lot of anti-Semitic ideology, it's that the Jews who have by far the most power and can essentially pull the strings, they're secular. They don't even know what the Talmud says. They don't. A lot of them are even atheists, right? So it's just such a large. They attribute the beliefs of one group of Jews to another group of Jews, and think that the actions they take based off those they're taking actions based on that set of beliefs. So again, it's not sophisticated. It's not thought through. We'll do a few more on Lucas, and then we could go to another account. Dear Christian, Jews are telling you Christian nationalism is a problem and do everything in their power to undermine and destroy your country because it is Nazism or something, while they're hypocritically have a Jewish state that you send billions of your taxes to. So again, here he goes. Jews are telling you Christian nationalism is a problem. Which Jews are saying this? Jews who are generally politically left, but to the far left, an area of the left. Again, there's no. It's not like wokeness is like a clearly defined term. We could do like a full live stream dedicated to a better understanding wokeness, and let's say my strong disagreements with it, but it's just let's just see it as some kind of a brand of leftism that has a certain set of traits and features. And generally speaking, if you hear somebody talking about like white supremacy or Christian nationalism, it comes from this group of people, and there's some amount of Jews that are woke, and they like the Christian woke and the atheist woke are going to be talking about this. Now, is there some percentage of woke Jews who don't support a Christian nationalist state? They do support a Jewish state, right? Is there maybe an inconsistency there? Perhaps, right? So there's a higher rate of woke Jews who support Israel than woke non-Jews. That's possible, right? Is that bias? It could be. Is it understanding? Perhaps there's a nuance there, right? You could say U.S. does not need to be a Christian state for the people in the U.S. to remain safe, which is true. That logic doesn't hold up in Israel, right? Very few people can make or I've yet to heard a good case for how the state of Israel gets dismantled and the citizens of Israel remain safe. That's not the same when it comes to the United States. So it wouldn't even be inconsistent if you think Israel should be an ethno state and the U.S. shouldn't. You could defend that position quite easily. Should we watch this video of his? No, this is a 7-minute video. Maybe another time. So here he's saying we should stop calling it the Israel lobby, Jewish lobby. People have to stop being afraid of saying Jewish. It is Jewish. They are all Jewish. It's clear who he has a problem with. So now, look at this poll. Okay, we didn't click the results yet, but knowing who his followers are, I'm going to guess what percentage we see. Are you concerned with the rise of anti-Semitism? Yes, it must be stopped. No, more is better. You would think if you would actually poll, let's say, the United States, very few would say no, more is better. They might not. They might not say yes, it must be stopped. They might say they don't think there's a rise, right? But given these two options, very few are going to say no, more is better. When it comes to Lucas's uh, followers, I'm going to guess an over 80% say no, more is better. Let's see, 87.6%. So to just give you an understanding of who his followers are. Here's something about Germany. Let's see. He goes, let me get this straight. Jews can laugh and share the dead bodies of Palestinians, but we show the kids they murdered, and it's violating of German law. I hope Germans rise up and kick these supremacists out of their country again. We received a complaint regarding your account of the following content. In accordance to that, holding recorded content, Germany specifically for following protection of minors, violation of human dignity. Right. Okay. Well, again, this might not have anything to do with Jewish supremacy or even some bias on X. I don't know what the posts are, but it's possible that like Germany just has stricter laws with showing dead children, and if that's the case, that's going to be true if it's Jewish accounts posting it or German account or Palestinian, dead Palestinian children or dead Israeli children or who the accounts are. He's not proving any bias. He's just showing that he had an issue with like German content laws, and it very well may not be them out to get him like he's making it seem. Right, and interesting, he very much a lot of anti-Semites, they always call out Jews for like being like these perpetual victims and talking about the Holocaust and this, and I agree that there is a some culture of victimhood in Jewish culture. In Judaism, like we do have a lot of this. I'm trying to say this without being offensive, but whatever. There's a culture of victimhood in Judaism that I'm sure many see, and it's, Palestinians too have a strong culture of victimhood as well. But you know who else does? Anti-Semites. They love to be the victims. The whole world's against them. This small group of people are pulling the strings, and their life isn't good because of the Jews. So it's funny how they accuse others of being victims when they themselves are constantly complaining that the world is against them. He's showing a poll saying 1 out of 5 young people 18 to 29 now say that the Holocaust never happened. Let's see. Agreeing with the statement above about Israel, the Holocaust is a myth. Do you agree with the statement? You have Oh yeah, well, interesting. Well, that might be a little concerning, huh? 1 in 5 18 to 29-year-olds. Again, I don't know what 1,500 U.S. adults is. Okay, looks like a legit poll. And it's funny when you go up to the higher age demographic, it goes from 20% to 8% to 2%. 65 plus, it's virtually 0%. That's interesting. So we could see this as a trend of what's to come, or it's something that will just be left in youth, right? These youth might grow up and understand that we have quite a fair bit of evidence to the Holocaust existing. It does get harder because you have all these Holocaust survivors who are, soon there won't be any Holocaust survivors left. So the farther we get away, we move from the Holocaust, the easier it will be to deny. But there's tens of thousands of recorded testimonies that carry a whole lot of weight. Thanks. Shout out to Julian for bringing me some morning. Is this for me or just giving me a sip? There's just a sip, but appreciate it nonetheless. What I would say about Holocaust now is that it shouldn't be illegal. The fact that it's illegal makes people more suspicious of it. Myself included, honestly. I've never thought to question any part of the official narrative until seeing that you're not allowed to question it. And I always get very suspicious when you're not allowed to question something by law. I think that things that hold up on their merit, things that are easy to prove, things that are obvious, let them be open for debate and discussion. You don't need a built-in mechanism to stop people from talking about things that are easy to prove. So don't make it illegal. Open up conversation about it, and that's probably how we can fight this denialism. All right, let's see his Jew chart. I like me a good chart, So we have a big circle, which encompasses most Jews. Most Jews, either religious or not, that are indoctrinated to feel they are permanent victims. There we go. There it goes, that victim narrative. Nepotistic, genocidal, and racist, and will protect other Jews even in pedo crimes, cases, and worse. Very easily inducted into the smaller circle. And then smaller circle, Jewish elite, runs world through banking, media, politics, secret society, Satanism, covert and overt genocide and murder, child sex trafficking, and all world tyrannies by deceit, blackmail, and force. So what's interesting here, this isn't an entirely untrue chart, but it follows a similar logic to his other arguments that if you take out Jewish and just say global elite and most other people, you have a similar logic. So you could attribute certain qualities to the elite and how they act. And then you could talk about the common folk and their views about the elite, or not being like aware of certain things the elite do. Those having some form of victim mentality, them acting in a way that's nepotistic. These aren't things that are unique to Jews. These are things that exist in all groups. But again, here it's attributed specifically to the group. And then this small little one is Jews that are neither. Now, are Jews more nepotistic or defensive of Jews than, let's say, a Christian would be of a Christian? I would say, yeah, in fact, they are. Generally, minority groups that are historically oppressed tend to, it gives them a stronger sense of unity. And with that, you could have things like nepotism. With that, you could have a thing of feeling protective over another Jew. This is a result of a history of oppression. This isn't unique to Jews. You see this in the Black community as well. You'll see this in any minority group that's been oppressed. It is a natural result of humans in a state of oppression and how they deal with the challenges of these external forces oppressing them. Often it comes in the form of group unity, which is interesting because nothing fuels Jewish pride and even called Jewish supremacy more than anti-Semites. Like Lucas Gage, his contribution to the world has been to create more anti-Semites and a stronger sense of Jewish unity, right? So there's more Jewish unity because he's alive. And this is kind of the result of hating groups. You, in a sense, make that group more unified and stronger. And then you'll see some of these, some of these qualities arise, like nepotism and just support for the group as a whole, or defensiveness over members of that group. That being said, it's not true that Jews don't criticize Jews. I mean, you're not going to find Jews that defend Jeffrey Epstein, unless we're talking about Alan Dershowitz. But that's because he's the defense attorney, and his job is to sometimes defend the worst people in existence, or Harvey Weinstein, or Bernie Madoff, right? These are all bad Jews that are widely condemned by other Jews. So it's also not entirely true. Back to Twitter. Yeah, so here's another example. So first of all, this journalist Rafat in Gaza was supposedly killed in an airstrike, which is very sad. He was one of the most prominent voices here on Twitter, coming directly out of Gaza. He was killed in an airstrike. I think it was yesterday or the day before. So he's showing, this is, before he passed, he was showing a screenshot of Israelis or pro-Israel people reaching out to him. And then Lucas shares this and goes, "You thought I was kidding when I said it's 99% of them? Keep telling yourself there's millions of good ones, like Norman Finkelstein." They hate him, by the way. So how can you know by a post like this? Like, how do you conclude from this it's 99% of a group believes something? So Lucas, in his victim mentality, he dedicates his time being anti-Semitic and hating Jews. Jews then attack him in mass, right? And the amount of Jews that attacked him probably make up, a tiny fraction of the Jews that are actually alive. So he has experience with Jews attacking him. In his lack of self-awareness, he thinks it's out of the blue and it's just mean Jews being mean to a goy, to a Gentile, right? That's how he interprets it. But no, any person who's mean to an entire group of people is going to get backlash from that group of people. And how could he then somehow attribute it to the 99%? Right? So it's again, it's just like he has a lack of self-awareness, and there's like a lack of sophistication to his arguments. That I guess this is what does well on Twitter, but you hear us. If we're not like Norman Finkelstein, then we're the bad ones. Cool. Let's move on to another account. I'll finish with this. Lucas is invited on the show at any time. I'd be happy to have him on for a conversation or even go on his show. Someone did try connecting us. He said he doesn't debate Jews. I told him, I responded on Twitter, said it wouldn't be a debate. It would be a respectful conversation. No answer. So I wonder what that's about. Cool. Let's find another account. Let's do a pro-Israel account. This guy, Elie David. Ugh. So Elie David is an entrepreneur and investor, does something with AI, and I wish he would kind of stick to that, and look, he's considered most influential founders on X. He's number 2, right after Elon Musk and before Sam Altman. So he has influence. If only those with influence had interesting things to say. So I first found out about Elie David through his his anti-vax beliefs. I don't know what his character arc here is or where he started, but I very much saw him in the phase where, vaccines are killing millions of people, a little bit of that pandemic ideology. So what's interesting is that when it comes to Israel-Palestine, he's very pro-Israel. He is Israeli, but when it comes to how he knows what's true, everything Israel says for him is fact, right? He sees Israel as the source of truth when it comes to the Israel-Palestine conflict. But Israel being one of the most vaccinated countries in the world, what's his thought on Israel and how they function when it comes to vaccines, when it comes to that narrative? So clearly he's going to be like, I'm starting us with a clear ideological inconsistency he has when it comes to Israel-Palestine. Israel's true. Everything they say should be believed. When it comes to vaccines, well, I don't know about that. So let's go through his tweets. Do we have time for his thread on free speech? No, it looks like a long one. So he's asking the UN, the head of the UN, to resign because he's calling for a ceasefire. Okay, that seems a little extreme. Climate cult has nothing to do with climate and everything to do with fascism and Marxism. Just to give you an idea of where he is politically, right? We know this narrative, but somebody actually showed a screenshot. I actually want to confirm this. Hold on, we're having some fire. We're having a fire alarm go off. Don't worry, the house is not on fire, but you know what? I appreciate those words. Inspiring accounts get way less interaction. Look at your own account, Adar. Thank you. And you know, honestly, I don't do much on Twitter. I don't spend much time there, so you know, it's possible I could get more traction by doing more. But I do agree that the easiest way for me to get more traction on Twitter would be to really dumb down the arguments and pick a side. That's the way. Pick a side, make your arguments simple. They don't need to make much sense, and you'll get traction. Cool. Fire alarm's off. Somebody did share a photo of Elie David as a member of the World Economic Forum, which is interesting because some of his stuff seems very anti-WEF, including this one here. You can't be Jewish without being Zionist. A cornerstone of Jewish prayer is the return to Zion, the homeland of the Jews. The prayer is said several times a day while facing Jerusalem. So this is just not true. Essentially, what he's saying is, in order to actually be Jewish, you need to believe in Judaism. And if you actually believe in Judaism, that means you're a Zionist. Now, I will leave that conversation up to theologians and to actual religious Jews. Where I can comment on is, you don't need to believe in Judaism to be Jewish. There's the Jewish people. I am of the Jewish people. I don't believe in the Jewish religion. I don't need to be a Zionist. I can believe whatever I want to believe. I do happen to believe that Jews should have the right to self-determination on their ancestral homeland. Same way I believe Palestinians deserve self-determination on their ancestral homeland. Does that make me a Zionist? Does it make me something else? I'm not sure, but this is just a dumb statement that really equates Judaism to being solely a religion. Might need to plug my computer in a few minutes. Okay. Okay, so check this out. Hi, Antonio Guterres, that's the head of the UN. Your staff are among the Hamas terrorists who surrendered yesterday. Any condemnation or busy invoking Article 99. You're a disgrace. So these quite troubling photos were released yesterday, and we don't know exactly what's going on here. We do know that to strip people down naked to their boxers and then take a photo of them for the world to see is not going to be a good look. When arresting somebody, you could strip them down to make sure that they don't have some kind of explosive on them or weapon on them. But if you need to do that, you should dress them shortly after, because this is just dehumanizing and humiliating. And you certainly shouldn't be taking photos as if it's some military victory. Now, we don't know we don't have the full story. So he's saying that so people saw these photos and said, those aren't terrorists. I recognize family members. I recognize members from the UN, from UNRWA. So Israel's just arresting civilians here. Elie David is interpreting this as saying, you see, they all are Hamas terrorists who happen to be members of the UN and UNRWA. But if he was actually intellectually honest and actually cared about truth, he wouldn't be able to reach the conclusion if they're Hamas terrorists who surrendered. Oh, sorry, getting a call. He wouldn't be able to reach a conclusion if they're Hamas terrorists who surrendered or if they're civilians who got arrested. The reason he's saying they're Hamas terrorists who surrendered is because that's what the IDF says. But again, if you really care about truth, you cannot be reaching conclusions based on what the IDF says. Same way you can't reach conclusions based on what Hamas says. Both have a history and incentive to lie, especially during war. But whatever the state says, you got to believe until it comes to COVID, and then question everything. That's right, Elie David. Honestly, I don't even mind this. I think it's okay to demand Hamas surrenders. Although it's not like if you demand they surrender and they don't, that means they don't have any other recourse or strategy they can take to end the bloodshed. It doesn't mean that if they don't surrender, everything Israel then does thereafter is thereby justified, right? Which he probably would believe to be the case. Yeah, I don't. It's possible that a Harvard graduate turned militant, which is sad, right? So much future, and you need to ask yourself, what in his world could cause somebody who's a Harvard graduate to want to become a militant? Is it ideology? Most certainly, but what fueled that ideology? What environmental conditions made somebody to make such a decision? Certainly, environmental conditions he would never have any ounce of self-reflection on, and what Israel can potentially do to change those conditions. Oh, so it seems like Antonio Guterres is for the first time Article 9. So I'm actually interested in what this means. So I'm going to read this, and but this is from an actual state account. So let's read it with a grain of salt. Oh, this is the ambassador to the UN. Okay. Today, the Secretary General has reached a new moral low. He writes that he is activating for the first time Article 99 of the UN Charter in relation to Israel-Hamas war, and an article that can be invoked in a situation where international peace and security are threatened. This Secretary General decided to activate this rare clause only when it allows him to put pressure on Israel, which is fighting the Nazi Hamas terrorists. This is proof Secretary General's moral distortion and his but. Okay, I mean, this isn't. We're not getting an objective understanding of what happened here. This is like also a little victim mentality. If Article 99 in the UN Charter is an article that can only be invoked in a situation where international peace, security are threatened, I don't think that's illegitimate to do. Like, okay, cool, cry about it. And if somebody has a report on Article 99 that would be less biased than what the Israel's ambassador to the UN would do, send it and we could read that instead. Just don't want to get bogged down in that unless we're debunking the ambassador, which we could do. Yeah, so like, why is this something that he thinks we should take pride in? So there's an Israel flag in Palestine Square in Gaza. I guess he's in the mentality that we need to reconquer Gaza and just annex it, make it Israel. And then when you ask him, what do you do of Palestinians living here, he'll probably say they should go to Jordan, right? He's one of those. Now, again, this is one of the problems we see in activism today, that Elie David has not made anybody he's not turned anybody to be a Zionist. He's not convinced anybody who's anti-Israel to be pro-Israel. What he has done is gotten many who were already pro-Israel to be like, oh, I agree with what this guy's saying. And he's gotten people who are anti-Israel to say, ooh, Zionists are douchebags. Like, look what this guy's saying, right? So Elie David has very likely created more anti-Zionists than he has Zionists. His contribution to humanity, which I can't comment on from what he's doing in entrepreneurship because I don't know, but his contribution to humanity as an activist is actually creating more hate for Israel and certainly not more love. So if he were to just never tweet again, we'd all be better off because of it. Right again. So now Rafat died. You see his just complete lack of compassion. Remember this evil. Many people asked X to suspend him. No need. He was killed today in an Israeli attack on Hamas terrorists. Right. So he's almost saying like, it's almost like you get what you deserve. There's that tone in this tweet, which is just a shitty thing to say. And again, if somebody who's on the fence about Israel-Palestine sees this, are they like, oh, I'm convinced of the Israeli argument? They're most likely going to be like, ooh, that's kind of a nasty way to act. I don't know if that's, if this side has supporters that I want to be aligned with, right? That's a natural conclusion of seeing people like Elie David. We'll do one more and then I'm gonna log it off. I just have so much to do today. But thanks for all those who tuned in. This was a fun little session. I guess we could do like 10 minutes of we could do like 5 to 10 minutes of Q&A. So if anybody has questions, please ask and I'll answer a few. We'll prioritize super chats. And then we'll do one more from Elie here. Yeah, he's talking a lot about the Harvard controversy, which was kind of cringe to watch. So yeah, to really speak on the Harvard video, because this is what he's talking about. So there's the video of, was it Dean of Harvard, some high position. Let's actually watch the video. Let's do a video review. Harvard genocide. We'll review this video and we'll wrap it up after that.
Are president of Harvard, so I assume you're familiar with the term intifada, correct?
I've heard that term, yes.
And you understand that the use of the term intifada in the context of the Israeli-Arab conflict is indeed a call for violent armed resistance against the state of Israel, including violence against civilians and the genocide of Jews. Are you aware of that?
That type of hateful speech is personally abhorrent to me.
And there have been multiple marches at Harvard with students.
So here's where the conversation goes wrong, because actually we'll watch it and then
Chanting, quote, there is only one solution, intifada revolution, and quote, globalize the intifada. Is that correct?
I've heard that thoughtless, reckless, and hateful language on our campus, yes.
So based upon your testimony, you understand that this call for intifada is to commit genocide against the Jewish people in Israel and globally, correct?
I will say again, that type of hateful speech is personally abhorrent to me.
Do you believe that type of hateful speech is contrary to Harvard's code of conduct, or is it allowed at Harvard?
It is at odds with the values of Harvard.
Can you
But
not
our
say here that it
values
is against the
also-
code of conduct at Harvard?
We embrace a commitment to free expression, even of views that are objectionable, offensive, hateful. It's when that speech crosses into conduct that violates our policies against bullying, harassment,
Does that
and
speech not cross
intimidation.
that barrier? Does that speech not call for the genocide of Jews and the elimination of Israel?
When that
You
speech-
testify that you understand that is the definition of intifada. Is that speech according to the code of conduct or not?
We embrace a commitment to free expression and give a wide berth to free expression, even of views that are objectionable.
You and I
outrageous,
both know
and
that's not the
offensive.
case. You were aware that Harvard ranked dead last when it came to free speech. Are you not aware of that report?
Okay, let's break this down. Poor woman, because she's really getting she was made seem much worse than she actually is, in my opinion. So the woman who's questioning her, what she's doing is she's saying globalize the intifada is the same as saying Jews should be genocided. And what the dean is responding is saying it depends on the context, essentially. Or while I don't agree with those terms, we have room for free speech. She's not saying that you can chant on campus Jews should be genocided. What she's saying is calls to globalize the intifada are within what we consider to be free speech. And the way you could defend that position is by saying globalize the intifada is not synonymous with genocide the Jews. Some might interpret it that way, but you could have other interpretations of what globalize the intifada actually means, right? It could just be global resistance against the state of Israel. That could also be in the form of BDS, right? Some people actually interpret globalize the intifada this way. So when she says it's contextual, that's the point she's trying to make. She's not saying that saying to genocide the Jews depends on context. She's saying globalize the intifada isn't necessarily a call to genocide the Jews. And I think that's actually a position that could be defended, but she did a poor job explaining that. It just seems like she's saying that calling for Jewish genocide is within what we consider to be free speech, and that's what she's getting pushback on. If she were to defend the point that if she were to say calling for genocide of Jews is not allowed, but saying globalize the intifada because it has many interpretations is within what we consider to be free speech, that is allowed, then people would be a lot less mad at her. But it's also very hard to sometimes get points across when you're getting berated like that by someone. So, yeah. Anyways, we'll do a few questions. Prioritize super chats if anybody wants to give a super chat, and then we'll wrap it up. We got through 2 accounts today. I'm down to do this again. If you all liked it, let me know in the comments if you like these streams. Sometimes it's hard to find guests to come on, especially 2. So we'll do the call-in shows. But doing these like solo things are just super easy. So when I'm very busy, I'm likely to just hop on and do one of these instead of like organize a conversation. Jewish ANCAP. Is there anyone in the Knesset that supports the idea of a confederation or federation? I'm actually not sure. We should ask Emmanuel Shachaf, who's been on the show. He's one of the architects of the federation, what he thinks. He would know. He knows who in politics supports it. I think there is some support. So Sparkalove is asking if they actually surrendered. There's a list of names and many are civilians. Right. I'm not sure. I've held off on trying to make statements of truth in the chaos of war because I don't really know who to trust. So I'm going to remain by saying I really don't know if those were terrorists who surrendered or if they're civilians who were just arrested. What I can say with fair confidence, right? There's the photo of them. People were like comparing them to like execution in the Holocaust. I could say with certainty or a high degree of certainty that those people weren't just executed, right? So it's to put them next to a photo of a Jew who's being shot into a pit. That's just not the right comparison. Faraz is asking, would participants be able to join in the video conversation? Yeah, we try to do that like once every other week or so. So if you want, Faraz, if you want to join next week's call-in show, you're more than welcome to. So, Nisa Harris, you're saying, while I agree that most students might not understand that the issue is the Penn professor was asking not what is interpreted, but blatantly is calling for genocide acceptable. I agree, but that's not the right question, because no one was calling for genocide. They were saying globalized intifada. She interprets it. She says, which means that like globalized intifada means genocide Jews. Are you saying it's okay to genocide Jews, or to say that you could genocide Jews? But that's not the right question that needs to be asked. So the woman questioning her attributed her own interpretation and made the professor defend her interpretation, not what others' interpretation may be. So it just made her look really bad. And I agree, if the question is calling for genocide acceptable, answer needs to be unequivocally no. I agree. Who do you see taking power of Gaza after Israel exits? So actually, yesterday I saw something that they are now planning on giving it to the Palestinian Authority. I saw a report about that yesterday. Was it on Haaretz or maybe Times of Israel, that they're prepping Mahmoud Abbas to take over, which I don't know. Does that give me high hopes? It's not like the situation in the West Bank is great, so I mean, it's better than Gaza. So yeah, maybe. Would the Palestinian Authority be better than Hamas? Almost certainly, yes. Can they actually hold Gaza? Unclear. But that's what it seems, the direction they're going in right now. Okay, we need critical thinking. What? Okay, we'll end it with this. But how long have you been following this channel to still repeat such bullshit? And why don't you come on for a call-in show one day? Because we literally we talk about this all the time. Palestine are a Semitic people. Ashkenazi are predominantly European DNA. Being pro-Palestine does not mean anti-Semitic to me. It means pro-Semitic to me. So Palestinians are not Semitic people. There are no Semitic people. It's no longer used to classify people. So you start starting with something factually incorrect. Semitic is a classification of language, of which Arabic is one of them. But the term anti-Semitic doesn't mean anti-people who speak a Semitic language. Anti-Semitic is synonymous with anti-Jewish. I realize this could be confusing, but that's what anti-Semitic means. It doesn't mean anti-Semitic people. It doesn't mean anti-people who speak a Semitic language. It means anti-Jewish. That is the definition of the term anti-Semitic. And to pretend like it means anything else is to just either be, willfully ignorant, or just want to make conversations so much more challenging by denying what is commonly agreed upon usage of terms. Now, Ashkenazis are predominantly European DNA. Ashkenazi DNA is between 40 to 60% European, so sometimes predominantly, sometimes not. The other percent comes from the Levantine, from this region. Being pro-Palestinian does not mean being anti-Semitic. I would agree with you there. You could be pro-Palestinian without being anti-Semitic, but it does not mean being pro-Semitic. Pro-Semitic isn't a thing. There's a concept called philo-Semitism, which means you like Jews. Some would say that's a form of anti-Semitism. I've never been bothered by philo-Semitism. I always thought it was cute. Like in China, when they found out I was Jewish, they thought it means I'm smart and a good businessman. Okay, I'll take that, But yeah, so let's just summarize. There's no Semitic people. There's Semitic languages. Anti-Semitic has nothing to do with Semitic people or Semitic languages. It means anti-Jewish. Pretending otherwise is really just getting bogged down in these conversations of definitions and semantics, rather than having real substantive conversations. So we're going to end it with that. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Next week, we might have Zahir back on for a one-on-one conversation. I'm also talking to Joseph Cohen from the Israel Advocacy Network. He's going to come on for a one-on-one. Maybe we'll bring them both on. I also want to have maybe Zach Foster will come on again for a one-on-one. These are all people who have generally come on not for one-on-ones, and I want to be able to go deeper with them on their views. So we're going to do that. Anyways, thank you all. Stay safe. Have an awesome weekend, and much love.